Right, hello everyone, and welcome to game number 1 between DeathTacticus and Yerand. We are still in the group stage of our 1v1 Winter Cup, and we are on IO to start. Pretty scarce carbon on this map. In fact, someone can monopolize carbon, and that's going to be really important. High carbon starting price, high fuel starting price, and a chem colony. So whoever takes control of that probably just wins this game, unless they screw up pretty massively. Not a friendly map. I do expect someone to found relatively soon for that. Although the options for founding there are kind of difficult. Nomad was the most obvious choice because there's just not enough near there. Alright, so DT crushing a bit of the carbon. I'm somewhat concerned about that because there are nukes available, but on the other hand, this is the easiest way to claim all the carbon. DT probably going to have to sell a fair amount of carbon to get to this upgrade in a reasonable amount of time, because aluminum's going to be slow for him. Yerand, on the other hand, going for a pretty standard scientist. There are pirates available, but he does have his basalt close enough to adjacent. He does have his ice. It's still just the question of how he's going to manage carbon. The only real option he has is rushing slant. Could also mutiny this, I guess, but that seems suicidal with fuel this high. Also probably pretty ineffective too. But yeah, DT should be getting those ions down now. Oh, blocking off the slant too. So Yerand just has absolutely no way to deal with that, although he is going to go ahead and build the ions now. That is probably the best he can do. Just get these down, never delete them. Otherwise, he's going to have a really hard time to get into them later. Right now, DT doesn't have all that much money to stockpile to drive up the price of carbon. So this is just kind of working, though not really, because well, the steel price is pretty near dead, and DT is already making a pretty solid profit from this move. Interesting choice of claim distribution here in ions. I mean, it makes plenty of sense. Since Yerand did manage to get into the fuel market, DT wants to kill it before Yerand can make any significant amount of money. And he really prioritized blocking slant, which I feel was perhaps a bit more aggressive than necessary, but it's probably not going to cost DT much. Already planning to go into power with the geotherms. It's a nice thing to be able to do. Yerand, on the other hand, going to geotherms is a bit more questionable. This is very far from his base, and it could have just been nuke plants, because, well, Yerand can just pull the uranium from the basalt. Whereas DT, he'd have to actually collect the uranium, so that makes the geos just a lot more appealing. Both players also do have to worry about water if they were going to go nuclear. Yerand going for nuclear plus the geo is interesting. I guess it makes sense. He's in a position where he's going to have a very hard time keeping up in the long game. So this just becomes the easiest way to deal with all this. And this was a free goon. This was a scientific free goon to start the game. I think DT thought the goon that Yerand purchased went on to that instead of there. Calling it BS because it would have been a timing play in that situation, but not the case. And I feel like DT could have afforded to drop a spy on that to make sure. Either forgetting about the free goon or just not all that worried about it. Yerand is making power money now, but he's still solidly behind. One whole HQ level, less cash and resources, does not have access to that carbon. still going to be difficult for him to get back into things. And the other problem right now is that his power is on top of his iron, so he's just a bit hard-pressed to actually move into steel. DT noticing that, taking advantage, buying into a large amount of steel. And making a tidy profit off of that. Should just, yep, sells out of it. Should be able to upgrade pretty soon. Glass also doing really nice work for DT. Yerand should really be looking to switch these into steel, get some glass down, get some water down, and that'll all work out nicely for him. Water plus the geotherm should be plenty of power for quite a while for Yerand. He does not need these nuclear plants. And DT's also in like that geo, so it's unlikely power will go anywhere crazy. Is that okay? That is a basalt tile, so that makes a little more sense. Otherwise, it'd just be the game deciding to give DT a free tile. DT decided to give it up for 9k is interesting. I mean, Yerand was not going to be making any more power money, so that's a bit weird. But on the other hand, that tile's just more or less useless for Yerand. Can't pick up teleportation because we're an IO, so even though it's a basalt tile, he's not going to want to ship that much that far. Let's see, Yerand should have one claim left. That should just go on this water, well, to make water here. And Yerand has been auto-selling aluminum, now has to buy back in. That's going to be difficult. A bit weird to me that Yerand did choose to nuke the carbon in particular. I mean, there were 2 tiles, and I feel like DT was in those tiles for long enough that he would not be in any major amount of trouble if those got nuked. And just in general, this game I feel like spies have been underused a bit. Yerand maybe not respecting that the nuke can go back on his aluminum. Sometimes as a scientist, it's easy to forget that you still have some things you need to worry about getting nuked. Yeah, DT's EMP just a lot more effective than Yerand's. Not much to be done about that. Okay, that's the ice. Both players with large stockpiles of fuel. Makes perfect sense. DT going for a hologram. Probably going to look for a patent lab soon. I do have some questions about what the patent would be. Liquid batteries always a good pickup. Nanotech always a good pickup. Synthetic meat generally useful. Anyway, carbon short though, also just perfectly reasonable. Again, that was just a large part of the play of this game. And with dynamite's there to help out. I would not repair that if I were Yerand. At least not until this is over. Although DT has no reason to sell out of this, so it might not ever get cheaper unless Yerand builds a hack array of his own and starts surplusing carbon. Which is probably a thing to do. Although still, Yerand a whole HQ behind, a lot of cash behind. It's hard to find an easy way for him to get back into things. That water processor feels a bit off to me. Probably better just to build it on the ice anyway, lose a bit of that adjacency, but Oxygen just always has that tendency to get difficult on IO. You don't want to be in a position where you're short one oxygen tile. Someone should be going into food soon. That price is insane. Okay, DT in a bunch of food. I'd probably actually look to hack food instead of carbon, but he's not hacking anything right now, which is certainly a problem. Also shouldn't be... okay, he stopped auto-selling the food. So that's good. Nanotech auction. Either player would be happy to pick it up. And Yerand going for that hacker array. Again, not choosing to build it on the ice tile. Just very strange to me. DT has not picked up any additional ice. 2 ice tiles is just not enough. But he is a nomad, and he still has 2 claims left. There are ways to deal with that. Okay, picking up 1 now. It's taking an awfully long time to spend these claims though. It's not what I'd expect out of DT. Alright, good freeze onto those farms. Yerand going to farms of his own. No longer a steal though. And he's still only on HQ 4, so that is concerning to me.
The hacker array is finished. Time to change our passwords.
Carbon surplus. Iron shortage. I wonder about that. DT does have that spied out, doesn't he? Yes, he does. Buying into a little bit. What is this tile? I guess it's going to be an optimization center. Might have been interesting or useful to see DT move into a basalt platform. Just giving him access to the uranium, to the iron, and to a little bit of extra silicon. It allows him to avoid some of these hacks. Yerand also has this spied out. Surplus and carbon. Again, that was the other option we were talking about for this hacker array. Is something to slow DT down a bit, although it's all just too little too late. DT is almost at the buy and really should just cancel all these patents and get it done. Because Yerand is in no position to defend. Alright, there we go. Okay, he bought both stocks in himself before he started buying into Yerand. That's fine. Alright. Yep, has the 100%. This game is over. Just that carbon monopoly doing very good work. The found really needed to come sooner from either player. I mean, where was it? 32? Could easily have gone for 48, I think. I mean, it would have been a slow, difficult start. It already was a slow, difficult start, but it was just that important. We saw how long it took Yerand to get those 2 ion collectors up. And that was just a real big slowdown. The other big problem being the nuclear plants replacing the steel. And maybe the way around that was to skip the solar condensers at that point and just put up the nuke plants. Although they would have been difficult to run without that source of income. He wasn't really making money on anything else. It was a difficult situation for him. And then the other problem just being the nuke on the aluminum. Hello everyone and welcome to game number 2 between DeathTacticus and Yerand. DT took game number 1 convincingly with a majority buy on IO. This time Yerand choosing Mars, and we'll see how this goes. We have a glass colony, a high glass price, double price steel, and silicon is looking moderately difficult. This is an excellent scientist that should see some good use. What else is a possibility? Maybe a scavenger in there. No nukes, so that works. Nomad also always works with this double price class. You can just do something like there and here. Interesting. Yerand going for the scavenger there to deny the scientist. Whereas DT, okay, this is an even better scientific spot than down there. Except, I guess, the aluminum access. Either way, both players with very strong founds. DT getting the better of the aluminum play though, just purchasing up all of that. Yerand being a little bit slow to the buy, can't blame him, because that is where I always am. Alright, so I think what I'd like to see here is a claim of both silicon tiles and that aluminum. Seems excellent. No, Yerand, you don't have silicon. Just collect that first. You can transition out of the silicon into the glass later if you need, or you can move the aluminum. And even if you're not collecting silicon right off the bat, just putting them on top of those tiles guarantees that if your opponent tries to make a play on that, you can always transition, if absolutely necessary. On the other hand, Yerand does have access to the black market soon. He can just pick up a claim, pick up a silicon tile, and that's not so bad. DT going full on into silicon. Can't quite afford to put down multiple glass kilns yet, so this is just an easy way to pull stuff in. Also sets him up for power later if he so chooses, although he has gone for that turbine first. Feels a bit odd to me. Power not all that high, that is just directly feeding money to Yerand. But I guess also having that tile there allows for a transition into, say, 2 farms or something, without too many problems. Anyway, Yerand skipping silicon didn't end up causing him any major problems. DT just not making quite enough money to make that work. And the price difference was just too great. Still not a huge fan of that though. I'm also not a huge fan of grabbing this water out here. Definitely is strong. But one, if you're going to be shipping from out here anyway, I think you grab this water. Slightly better adjacency if you need that full triangle, instead of having to grab a low. And the other thing is, you could also just use the water right here. Having that nice flexibility to rotate buildings around is always just great. Alright. Still getting chain frozen is a really nice thing for Yerand to do. Slows DT down tremendously. Steel is just that expensive. This, on the other hand, less interesting. I would actually maybe go for 32 as Yerand. Yerand doesn't have any power up at the moment. This would solve his power problem and give him that extra claim going forward. The other thing going on with Yerand's found is that he doesn't have great access to wind power. I mean, there's some kind of decent wind here, but that's about it. This power is only rising very slowly still, so Yerand does have time. Does have his upgrade resources pretty well secured, although carbon's going to be a bit slow.
The black market is online.
That is one thing I'm concerned about for Yerand, just not producing quite enough water. There's no particularly easy way to fix that for him. Yep. Starting to see diminishing returns on that black market play role here. That is just way down from the initial 90-second freeze. Still very effective, but starting to be less so. Let's see, Yerand's still quite a ways away from that upgrade. DT buying a ton of carbon. That hasn't panned out all that well from him. I guess it wasn't all bought. There was a lot that was just shipped in. But still, it feels like a lot of... Okay. I was gonna say it feels like a lot of money that wasn't getting put to good use, but now he can just sell a bunch because Yerand just ran out of carbon and put down very expensive buildings. I really don't understand the move into reactors. He already had a water problem and it's only going to get worse from here. I guess there's still always the option of buying a clay, moving into some more water here, or just transitioning the farms. Reactors are a good market, it just feels dangerous. I guess power surges are just that expensive, which explains the choice of slowdown strike instead of mutiny or power surge.
How could one refuse such
Either
a
way,
wonderful piece of
roughly
land?
even on money. DT, oh, still that whole HQ level behind. Okay, Yerand did pick up a claim for that medium water, so that
Congratulations.
makes a bunch more sense. I'm surprised at DT going this far for this tile. 20k is a fair amount. DT, his biggest advantage right now is in power. And, well, when you pick up 20k extra debt, that makes that a whole lot harder. Still pretty close to the upgrade though, just a little more steel. And there we go. Should have access to a lot of really strong life support markets now. Just need to see how he makes that work. Yerand getting to HQ4, also no surprise. I'm not sure going for that third carbon tile made a ton of sense. Because it is plenty of carbon income, the problem is just that it keeps getting shut down. And having a third tile adjacent does nothing to help with that. Much rather see a goon squad there or a mule placed there. Obviously, spending a cooldown that way is not optimal, but it is very much an option. Especially since Yerand isn't doing anything else with his cooldown right now. Is he going to go into power yet? He really needs to go into power. Okay, bought a claim. That's probably going to go into power. If it doesn't go into power, okay, there we go. There's one geo claimed. It's going to be absurdly expensive though. And needed to be a bit more careful with this carbon. And it's not like we can say that Yerand didn't see this sort of thing coming. It's been constant throughout the game, so it's a bit odd to me that nothing has ever been done to try to correct that. I guess there have been a lot of other things to worry about, the steel, the power. Still, at this point with this big a lead, it feels like he needed to be a lot more careful instead of just continuing to pound that steel. Just make sure power doesn't spiral out of control and kill you. So I think that's the biggest risk right now.
This is not an auction for drugs.
Also, water, kinda... I mean, food just not very good right now. This could just be a transition into solar panels. That's perfectly fine. Power is that important, Yerand. Please fix this problem. That boost onto carbon is interesting. DT knows there's still no goon there. Could just freeze it out. Although I guess at this point Yerand has picked up enough carbon that it's not a problem. These should still be solar panels.
The black market is open for business.
Instead, Yerand just never fixing his dead problem, going to eat a nice D-tick. I mean, I guess he could pay off that 10k probably. Still not pretty. Yerand also just not with very many markets to make money on right now. Just the reactors mostly. I'm very confused about the third farm. There's just no reason for that. Food already unprofitable. DT's also in farms. He's going to keep driving that price down. Just stay in the pair. I mean, I guess you do want the claims there so you can transition them into water if necessary, except you don't need that because you picked up this third water pump for some reason. You have all this water here. Don't devote claims that you can't take back. This is all very, very strange to me. Also, this optimization center connected to his base could easily be next to this machine shop. I just don't quite understand a lot of these decisions. Another argument in favor of taking this triangle of water instead of this, well, you could just have transitioned into an off-world or an optimization there later. It would have been great. I mean, because when you're having 3 good water pumps, you're bound to build up a huge stockpile of water. So you would just be able to move one of those claims back. Either way, I just don't see a good way out of this hole that Yerand has dug himself into. And it's just so unnecessary. If he'd just done something more about power earlier, he would be in a fine situation. He's still an HQ level up, he still has advanced buildings up. He's still set up reasonably well to get into an off-world before too long, although off-worlds just aren't very inspiring. Chems are a nice launch, I guess.
Congratulations.
Why is Yerand still taking 20k auctions? I mean, for a claim that's okay, but this is money. This is just actual money for Yerand. And he can't do anything else with his cooldowns anyway, he might as well be buying claims. That 20k is just more expensive. I mean, DT getting the claim for 18 is cheap. So it makes some amount of sense, but it's still just not pretty. Everything is just very awkward right now. Yerand desperately needs to get out of debt before this tick. Because this is going to be a long game. DT making plenty of money to defend himself. Yerand just can't ignore this debt. He'll be dead before too long. This is going to be an 84k debt tick. That brings him down to a nice, what, $11 stock price? That's just way too low. Can't afford to let this hack go through before paying. Can't afford to do any of this. But he's just gonna eat this debt tick, and he's just well on his way to losing this game. And it's quite unfortunate because this game is now also frozen for me. I must have gotten disconnected. Nope, there we are, catching up. Oh right, this is even more than 84k because of our recent change that lets D plus X actually have higher interest rates. 102k. DT already up to 50% of the buy, more or less. And things aren't going to get any better. These farms continue to baffle me. This continues to be strange. This is also a little strange.
Prepare for pending market adjustments.
Trying to make these shortages work, but it's not going to generate nearly enough money, especially since he had to put so much into stock. I'm not so sure about DT taking that upgrade. He didn't need to, but again, it doesn't hurt him. I guess it does cut off some of these hacks for Yerand, and it does push towards a longer game, which the longer this goes, the more things tilt in DT's favor. Yerand really did look to be in control of this early. Yerand just let this slip away by not building power.
Sold.
It's interesting that DT took that for 40k instead of just letting it go. I mean, it's fine either way. This game should just be completely over. Next that tick will be what, 44% interest on 388k? Yeah. It's gonna be like a solid 150k or more than that. Yeah, it's gonna be like 160, 170, I don't even know. That math is too difficult to do on stream. Although there's not much else to talk about at this point because this is just that over. It is interesting to be hacking chemicals when you are the only, well, I guess DT has a patent lab down now, but otherwise he would have been the only person spending chemicals. It's a bit awkward. Again, there's no reason why Yerand shouldn't be in some chems at this point. It is dirt cheap for him to produce, doesn't need 3 farms, doesn't really even need that aluminum, as long as he's not producing this electronics, which is probably a decent market before too long. D plus 13, 171k.
Market misinformation in progress.
DT will be able to do the shift buy at any moment. This should even be a nice $1 stock price. Maybe DT wants to wait until that happens. Total value, negative 27k. Does DT have nanotech? Yes. No DT. That little over-aggressive sell-off. Alright, that's where Yerand stock is going to settle, unless he keeps buying into DT. Alright. Yeah, he's going to get about 260 in stock value for every pip he buys. And I've fallen frozen again. Electronics, not a great market anymore. I see, DT has been in electronics. Nanotech and all that coming a little too soon. But it's all fine. Next that tick. Next that tick. DT just taunting Yerand right now with these claims. He even bought the return claim to do that. That is the type of player DT is. Yerand has managed to push back into a D plus 13 bond rating. He was at D plus 14 before, so he's making solid progress. Although he's about to receive a massive setback. Not gonna quite reach the 1 million debt this game, which is unfortunate. But can't say he didn't put up a good effort. And DT should just have the shift buy very shortly after the debt tick. 313k. That is $15 of stock value lost. $15 that Yerand did not have in the first place. Well, that was a series. That was a series. Yeah, just not much more to say about that one. It looked like Yerand had that wrapped up for a while, and then things just fell apart. DT going for that pleasure dome. I don't know. Let's see how much money that made. It made 25k. Excellent. Good work. I mean, I guess with all the other prices on World pretty much dead, it was a fine tile. Still though. Never a huge fan of those pleasure domes that DT loves to build. Especially since he didn't have a great answer for powers still. Guess that's what the patent lab was up for. Probably if he didn't go for that early nanotech, it would have gone into some superconductors, some VR, probably carbon scrubbing as well. And that would have made all those problems disappear.